The shovel struck earth, not stone, not root, but flesh. Beneath the cracked Texas dirt, something moved. Then it screamed a broken cry that rose from underground. In the first 15 seconds, Samuel Crawford unearthed what no man on the frontier ever hopes to find: a living girl buried alive, clawing for breath, for light, for a second chance. The sun beat down without mercy. Samuel's hands bled from 3 desperate hours of digging, trying to find water for dying cattle. But now he'd found something else entirely. Not water, a secret. A child coughing dirt, eyes wide with terror, whispering through cracked lips. They said I was already dead. Someone tried to bury her, and they planned to return to finish the job. From that moment, Samuel Crawford was no longer just a lonely man on the range. He was now the only thing standing between a girl and those who would bury the truth forever. And this is how it begins. The shovel hit something that wasn't rock, not dirt either. It gave like flesh, but with a sound that didn't belong under the earth. Then it screamed. Samuel Crawford dropped the handle like it burned him. 3 hours under the high noon sun, blistering his neck, breaking his back, searching for water to save dying cattle, and now this. Not water, a girl, buried shallow, just under the topsoil, wrapped in death like someone meant her to disappear. Her mouth moved beneath a layer of dust. Her fingers twitched. Alive. Still alive. He dropped to his knees, scraped dirt barehanded, skin split open on rocks and roots. He didn't stop. First came cloth, torn dress, then hair matted dark full of soil, then a mouth, lips cracked gasping, eyes shot open, wild, brown and wide with a fear no child should wear. He pulled her up and she collapsed into him like she'd been falling forever. Bones. That's what she felt like, just skin and bones. Cold, but sweating. He held her, tighter than he'd held anything since the fire took his wife and daughter 5 years back. Her name, when it came, was no louder than wind through cactus: Emma. He got her to the cabin, laid her on the bed, fed her water from a tin cup like he would a wounded foal. She drank slow, eyes never left him. Who did this? He asked. She stared through him. Then she said 4 words that made his stomach knot. My brothers buried me. Time stopped. Her voice broke when she said it again. More details came. Words like poison, murder, pillow, inheritance. She had seen it all. The way they'd killed their own kin father first, then mother, then decided Emma was one secret too many. I woke up in the dark, couldn't move, dirt in my mouth. I screamed, but no one heard. Samuel did. And now it was his burden. Outside, the wind howled across the dry plain. A dust devil twisted near the fence. The sun was bleeding out behind the hills. They'll be back, Emma whispered, her voice flat. Not fear. Not now. Something colder. Samuel looked at the rifle on the wall, looked at the girl in his bed, looked at the busted hands that had clawed her from the earth. He wasn't just a rancher anymore. He was the line between justice and a second grave. And somewhere out there the brothers were already riding. Her name was just Emma. No last name she wanted to claim, not when the one she carried came soaked in murder. She sat on Samuel's bed, wrapped in an old wool blanket, legs pulled to her chest. Her eyes, sharp, sunken, searching, never stopped moving. Every creak of the cabin made her flinch. Every gust of wind sent her gaze to the window. She wasn't looking at the world. She was watching for ghosts that wore her brothers' faces. Samuel sat at the table silent. A pot of beans boiled over on the stove. He didn't move to stop it. I saw them kill my folks, she said, voice like rust scraping metal. Mama first. She woke up when they smothered Papa. She fought harder. Emma stared at the floor. They made it look peaceful, like sleep. Folks brought pies to the funeral. The words hung heavy in the cabin, thicker than the desert heat. Samuel didn't ask how she'd survived. Not yet. Some stories spill on their own, and some have to bleed. I was supposed to be next, Emma said, lifting her sleeve. Her arm bore bruises, old ones, finger-shaped, familiar. They said the ranch was theirs now. No girl was going to hold it back. Samuel clenched his jaw. The Morrison name meant something in these parts. Big spread, big cattle, big money. But now he saw it different, built not on blood, but burial. He watched Emma reach into her pocket and pull out a crumpled piece of paper. Wrote it all down, she whispered. Every word, every scream. Where they hid the will, where they dug the grave. I made copies too. Told someone. She looked up, finally meeting his eyes. If I die, it still gets out. There was steel in her voice, cold, sharp, forged in fear. Samuel stood and walked to the window. The sun had nearly dipped behind the ridge. Shadows stretched long across the dust. On the horizon, 3 figures on horseback came into view, small, but closing the distance with every second. They're here, Emma said flatly. Samuel reached for his Winchester. He checked the chamber like a ritual he hadn't performed in years. His fingers were steady now. Calm. You got any family that'd take you in? No one I trust. Then you stay here. No matter what happens, you stay hidden. Emma didn't nod. She just stared out the window, watching death ride in. Outside, hooves thundered. Dust curled behind the riders like smoke from Hell's Gate. 3 Morrison boys riding hard and ready to finish what they'd started. Samuel stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. He wasn't just defending a stranger. He was standing between a girl and the grave her bloodkin dug for her. The Morrison boys rode in like wolves, dust curling off their coats, spurs sharp, eyes colder than a dry well at midnight. Thomas led, eldest, the mouthpiece, a smile that never reached his eyes and a drawl that could charm snakes. Behind him rode Marcus, thick-necked and silent, hands like bricks, and a temper quick as a prairie fire. Last was James, the youngest, too eager, too jumpy, the kind of man who shoots before thinking and lies before blinking. Samuel watched them pull up his rifle, low but ready. They didn't dismount at first, just sat their horses looking over the cabin like they already owned it. They were just here to collect. Well now, Thomas called out, tipping his hat with mock courtesy. Ain't this cozy? Samuel didn't answer. We're looking for our sister, Marcus said. Voice rough, like gravel under boots. She wandered off this morning. Can't say I've seen her, Samuel replied. His tone was flat, his jaw stone. James circled his horse around the yard, eyes twitching, nose sniffing for weakness. He glanced toward the back of the cabin. His gaze lingered. She's touched in the head, Thomas said, dismounting smooth as a fox slipping through brush. Since Ma and Pa passed, thinks we're the ones that done it. He chuckled. Grief does funny things to a young mind. Samuel stayed silent. Let them talk, let the rope tighten. But family's family, Thomas went on. We just want her safe. Bring her home, where she belongs. Behind the cabin wall, Emma held her breath. Every word from her brother's mouth twisted the air like poison. She pressed her hand to the paper in her pocket, the one that might be the only thing keeping her alive. You got no right to be here, Samuel said, stepping forward. This is my land. Marcus dismounted now. James followed. All 3 were on the ground, 3 guns, 3 bad intentions. You see, that's the thing, Thomas said, stepping closer. We think she came here. Her tracks say as much. And if she's here, well, that puts you in the middle of family business. His voice dropped. You don't want to be in the middle, Mr. Crawford. Then a creak came from inside. Just a floorboard, maybe. But it was enough. All 3 heads turned toward the cabin. James drew first, just his hand hovering near the gun. Samuel didn't flinch. You take 1 step toward that door, he said, and I'll drop the first man with a hand near iron. Thomas smiled. Not like a man amused. Like a man who's already written your name on a tombstone. You just made yourself a part of this. He whispered. But before he could move, before the threat could turn to gunfire, a sound rolled in from the east. Hoofbeats. Real ones. Fast and close. Another rider, maybe 2 coming hard. All 4 men froze. Emma's breath caught, and just like that the ground shifted again. The sun was falling, bleeding across the sky like an open wound, casting long gold shadows over dry grass and broken fence rails. And with every inch it sank, Samuel knew his odds were doing the same. The Morrison boys were still, silent, watching that dust trail grow out of the east. 2 riders, moving fast. Thomas's jaw tensed. You expecting company? Crawford. Samuel said nothing. He wasn't, but he prayed whoever was coming wore a badge. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer. Emma crouched behind the cabin wall, knuckles white breath tight. That sound, it could mean rescue, or it could mean a bloodier end. Then the riders broke through the dust. 2 horses, one dark, one pale. On the saddle of the first sat a man in a weathered brown duster, hat low, rifle strapped across his back. On the second, glinting in the dying light, was a badge, Deputy Pete Crawford. Samuel exhaled, just once, then squared his shoulders. "Well now," Pete called as he slowed eyes sweeping the yard landing on Thomas and his brothers. "Looks like a family reunion." Thomas's smile came too fast. "Evening, Deputy. Just looking for our sister. She wandered off this morning, bit touched, poor thing." "She here?" Pete asked, gaze flicking to Samuel. "Nope," Samuel said flatly. "Not unless she buried herself under my fence." Emma winced. Thomas turned. "You mind if we take a look, Deputy? Ain't accusing no one, just trying to keep our kin safe." Pete's eyes narrowed. He'd seen too many lies wrapped in honey. "I'll do the looking. You just stay where you are." James shifted in his saddle, too fast. Pete's hand dropped to his pistol. That's when the air cracked open. Gunfire. 1 shot, then 2, then chaos. Samuel didn't wait. He dove for cover behind the trough bullets punching through the air where his chest had been. Emma screamed. A window shattered. Marcus was down, shot clean through the shoulder. James cursed and fired wild. Thomas crouched behind a post yelling orders like, this was war, and it was. Pete's partner moved, sharp, took aim, dropped James's revolver with 1 round that shattered bone. Blood sprayed. Thomas roared and raised his gun. Samuel fired first. The shot caught him in the thigh, sending the eldest Morrison tumbling back with a cry like a wounded bull. Then it was quiet. Smoke hung in the air like ghosts waiting for the wind. 3 brothers lay broken in the dirt. 1 clutching his leg, 1 howling, 1 moaning like a man who saw the gallows waiting. Pete dismounted, boots crunching gravel. Looks like she didn't imagine a damn thing. Emma stepped out from the shadows, pale but unshaking. Held out a crumpled page covered in dirt and ink. "I wrote it all down," she said. Every word. Pete took the page, scanning the truth spelled out in a child's trembling script. He turned to Samuel. "You got any coffee in that house? Pot's still hot." "Good. You're gonna need it, because this thing ain't over yet." The knock came just after midnight. 3 slow raps against the wood, too calm to be frantic, too steady to be friendly. Samuel rose from the table like a man who'd heard death knock before. The fire had burned low. Emma was asleep in the corner, wrapped in one of his old army blankets, her face soft now. The fear finally loosened from her jaw. He stepped toward the door, boots quiet against the floorboards, Colt in hand. Another knock. Slower this time. Measured. He opened the door a crack. A woman stood there, tall, veiled in dust. A coat too big for her frame and a satchel slung over her shoulder. The moonlight hit her eyes, grey, cold, sharp, like river stones. She looked like a ghost out of winter. "You Samuel Crawford?" she asked. "I am." She reached into the satchel, slow, deliberate. Samuel tensed, ready. But what she pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a letter. Wax-sealed, crisp, unopened. "This is for you," she said. Samuel took it. The seal was familiar. Henderson Mercantile stamped deep into the red wax. Emma stirred behind him. The woman turned to leave. "Wait," Samuel called. "Who are you?" She paused, glanced back. "Just the messenger, but you'd best read it fast. By morning the whole county will know that girl's still breathing." She disappeared into the dark like fog curling back into canyon rock. Samuel closed the door and broke the seal. Inside, ink so fresh it hadn't dried smooth was Emma's handwriting. Clear, steady, written before she ever set foot on his land. "If you're reading this," the letter began, "then they know I'm alive. And they'll try again." She detailed it all. Every whisper behind the barn, every plan, every lie. Names, dates, where they kept the old will. Where the blood was buried beneath the feed trough, wrapped in the pillow Mama never woke up from. And she ended it with 1 sentence that made Samuel's hands shake. "Give this to Mrs. Henderson. If she's dead, take it to the marshal. If you're dead, let the letter ride without you." Samuel looked at Emma, still sleeping. She'd planned for everything, even his death. The knock hadn't been just a warning, it was the turning of a key, and the door it opened wasn't one you closed again. The brothers rode in just after dawn, dust curling behind their horses like smoke off a battlefield. They weren't hiding anymore. 3 silhouettes framed by the rising sun rifles across their saddles, eyes sharp with the kind of intent that didn't ask questions twice. Samuel stood waiting, shotgun in hand boots, planted firm in the dirt. Emma stood behind the cabin window, her pale face barely visible behind the glass. But she wasn't crying now. Not anymore. Fear had frozen into something harder. She was ready. Thomas was the first to dismount. His coat flared like a preacher stepping up to the pulpit. Calm, confident, deadly. "Mornin', Sam," he said like they were old friends about to share coffee. "Heard you been housing what don't belong to you." Samuel didn't blink. "Ain't nobody here but me and the truth." Marcus grinned. "Well, hell, that's a damn shame. We came all this way looking for a liar." James stayed on his horse, rifle resting casual on his thigh. But his fingers twitched like they were itching for something more permanent than talk. Thomas stepped closer. "We ain't here to hurt nobody, Sam. Just want what's ours." Little sister got herself confused, started spouting nonsense about pillows and blood. "We're here to bring her home. Quietly. No need for drama." Samuel's jaw clenched. "Home's not where you bury family alive." Thomas's smile cracked. Brief, barely a flicker, but it was enough. Samuel raised the envelope. She wrote it all down. Everything, names, dates, even the part where you planned to say she wandered off and fell into a ditch. The air shifted. Thomas's hand drifted to his belt. "That's so, already on its way to the marshal," Samuel said. "If I don't ride into town by sundown, it goes public. Word spreads faster than bullets, and this town's not as quiet as you think." Marcus spit into the dust. "You bluffing Crawford." Samuel stepped forward, his boots crunching over broken ground. "Try me." For a moment the wind held its breath. James's knuckles went white on his rifle. Marcus was calculating odds, and Thomas looked like a man who'd just lost control of the fire he lit. "You're forgetting something," Thomas said, voice low. "Letters can disappear. Riders too. This desert's got room for more graves than you can count." Samuel smiled without warmth. "Then you'd best start digging, 'cause you won't find her easy. And you sure as hell won't find peace." They didn't shoot, not yet. But the silence they left was heavier than gunfire. The first shot cracked the morning open like a thunderclap. James fired. He never meant to aim high, just to scare, maybe to rattle, but fear and pride make poor gun hands. His bullet whistled past Samuel's ear and buried itself in the cabin wall. Samuel didn't wait. His shotgun roared once, just once, and James tumbled from the saddle like a sack of wet meat. Dust rose around his body, still twitching, blood soaking fast into the sand. The world went silent. Then it exploded. Marcus screamed and charged, rifle raised, fury wild. Samuel ducked behind the trough, racked another shell, and popped up just in time to see Marcus fire. The shot punched through the edge of the water barrel. Wood splintered. Water sprayed like blood. Samuel squeezed the trigger. The blast took Marcus in the leg, spun him sideways, dropped him into the dust, howling. One left. Thomas. Still standing. Still calm. Still deadly. He hadn't drawn yet. He just stared at Samuel. Then at James lying still. At Marcus writhing in pain. And finally, at the cabin where behind that wall was the reason this had all come apart. "You killed your own blood," Thomas said. "For her." "I didn't kill anyone," Samuel answered. "You brought this on yourself." Thomas's eyes narrowed. "I was going to let her live just long enough to sign over the deed. Could have been quiet. Clean." Samuel stepped out from cover, lowered his shotgun, and now Thomas drew. Quick. Samuel was quicker. One shot. Thomas stumbled, eyes wide, as if surprised by the hole blooming red beneath his ribs. He fell to his knees, then face first into the dirt beside his brothers. 3 men. 3 bodies. The ranch was quiet again, but not still. Emma pushed open the cabin door, her feet bare on the blood-speckled ground. She walked to Samuel, staring at the dead. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stood there, arms crossed over her chest, like she'd known it would always end this way. Samuel put a hand on her shoulder. "It's done," he said. But Emma shook her head. "No," she whispered. "Not yet." They buried the brothers in the same dirt they meant for Emma. Shallow graves, no prayers, no markers. Just 3 mounds under the cottonwood, where the wind never stopped and the soil stayed soft. Samuel dug with his own hands. Not out of mercy, out of necessity. Coyotes didn't care about justice. Neither did the sun. Emma watched, silent. Her face unreadable, her arms wrapped tight across her chest. When Samuel finished, she stepped forward and dropped something onto the middle grave. A scrap of fabric, torn, mud-stained. The last piece of the dress she wore when they buried her alive. "They told me I was dead," she said. "Guess they weren't wrong." Not the old me. Samuel didn't answer, just tipped his hat and turned toward the house. But Emma didn't follow. She knelt by the third grave, Thomas's, and pulled a small rusted box from under the roots of a mesquite bush. She wiped off the dust, hands steady, movements rehearsed. "What's that?" Samuel asked. She opened it. Inside, folded pages, a second stained in old blood. Signed by her father, sealed in wax. "They never knew I saw him hide it," Emma whispered. "He knew they were planning something. He just didn't think they'd move so fast." Samuel took the will, opened it. The ink had faded, but the words held, clear as sunlight. The ranch undivided, to remain in Emma Morrison's name until her 21st birthday. No sale, no division. It was the real one, the legal one, and it made every deed the brothers filed after Jacob Morrison's death worth less than the paper it was printed on. "That's why they tried to kill me," Emma said. "Not just for what I saw, for what I owned." Samuel looked out across the dry hills where fence lines had been redrawn, water rights stolen, neighbors pushed out. All of it based on a lie. "You show this to the marshal?" he asked. Emma nodded. "Soon." "But not yet." "Why not?" She stood, brushed the dust from her knees, eyes hard, now older than 14. "Because if the law comes now, they'll just clean it up for profit. Sell the ranch, sell me again in a different way." Samuel understood. Some truths needed space, time, fire. The storm had passed, but the dust hadn't settled. For 3 days, the ranch stood quiet. No gunshots, no riders. Just wind and the weight of what had been done. Samuel patched the bullet holes in the cabin wall. Emma sat on the porch carving something from wood. She never said what it was. She didn't have to. Her hands worked steady. Her eyes stayed sharp. Every evening Samuel watched her. Not like a guardian. Not like a man waiting for thanks. But like someone who'd once lost everything and now wasn't sure what he'd found. On the 4th morning, they rode. The sky was clear. The trail to Henderson's store cut through dry canyons and brush thick with silence. Samuel rode ahead, rifle across his lap. Emma followed close, the will tucked inside her coat. Her father's words pressed to her chest like armor. The store came into view just past noon. A sagging roof, sun-faded sign, but the windows held light, and the bell above the door still rang like it remembered joy. Mrs. Henderson stood behind the counter, same apron, same eyes that had seen too much and said too little. She looked up as they entered. And when she saw Emma, her mouth fell open. "Lord in heaven," she whispered. "They said you were dead." Emma didn't flinch. They almost made it true. Samuel handed over the papers. The second will, the letter, the names, everything. Mrs. Henderson read in silence. Her hand trembled just once, then she folded the papers, slow and careful, and slipped them into a tin box behind the counter. "You trust the marshal?" Emma asked. "I trust justice," the woman answered. "But it don't always ride fast. Or fair." "We're not asking for fair," Samuel said. "Just for truth to stay standing when the smoke clears." Outside, horses whinnied. A wind kicked up from the south. Mrs. Henderson nodded once. "I'll send word. Quiet. Careful." Emma turned to go. "Wait," the old woman called. "Your name's still on that deed. Means something. Might be time you started acting like it." Emma didn't smile, but she stood taller as they rode back. The sun dipped low behind them, shadows stretched long. And though nothing was finished yet, one thing was clear. She wasn't running anymore. The sky broke open that evening. Not all at once. Not like the storms that crash through in a fury. No, this was slower, gentler. The kind of rain that creeps in behind silence, not anger. It began as a whisper, a patter on the porch roof, a soft tapping on the dry earth that hadn't tasted water in weeks. Samuel stepped outside the old wooden door creaking behind him. The land stretched out before him, soaked in dusk and memory. Dust turned to mud. The graves under the cottonwood darkened. Not washed clean, but quieter somehow. Emma sat on the porch steps. She didn't run from the rain. She tilted her face to the sky, eyes closed, arms loose at her sides. Let it hit her skin. Let it soak through the old dress, cling to her scars. She didn't flinch, didn't speak. Just let the water fall. As if it belonged, Samuel lit a match. The flame sputtered in the breeze, then held. He touched it to the lantern and hung it by the door. A soft glow cut through the gloom behind them. Inside, supper warmed over the fire. 2 bowls, 2 chairs, 1 roof. Tomorrow riders might come. Bankmen, surveyors, folks with questions and papers and polished boots. The world didn't stop just because justice had touched down for a moment. But for now, in that rain-soaked breath between what was and what might be, they were just 2 souls on a porch watching a broken land drink. Emma finally spoke. "You ever think people can start over?" Samuel didn't answer right away. He looked out across the ranch. His ranch, her ranch, theirs maybe. Fences needed mending. Roof too. A new well, a new spring, a new chapter. Not sure starting over's the right word, he said. But you can start different. Emma nodded. The rain fell harder now, the kind of steady curtain that keeps the world quiet long enough for wounds to knit. From inside the cabin, a whistle rose, tea ready. Samuel turned to go, but paused. "Come on," he said, "before that roof starts leaking again." Emma stood, wiped her wet palms on her dress, and followed. They stepped inside. The door closed, and for the first time in a long time, the ranch didn't feel haunted. It felt like home. But what would you have done if you were Samuel? If you found a girl buried alive in your land, and the men who put her there came knocking? Would you risk your life to protect a stranger? Or would you walk away and let the past stay buried? Let us know below. Because out here in the West, truth rides fast, but choice rides faster. And the dust never forgets.